to Senate Democrats' government shutdown, and it's similar to the bipartisan legislation enacted during previous shutdowns. And we did pass that, but Harry Reid thus far has refused to take that up.
Will the gentleman suspend?
Yes, I certainly.
I must ask the chair if I can yield the rest of the balance of my time.
Be glad to.
Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Pennsylvania yields back.
That's correct.
Our speakers announced policy of January 3rd, 2013. The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Gohmert, is recognized for 18 minutes as the designee of the majority leader.
Thank you. And I appreciate so much my friend Mr. Perry from Pennsylvania as bringing this whole issue forward. And there are a number of more votes that we did take. And we took up Head Start for Low-Income Children Act, providing official education funding to support Head Start programs across the country. And, wow, 168 of our Democrats across the aisle voted against that. And Harry Reid is refusing to take that up. Friends across the aisle wanted a vote, so we voted for the Deficit Reduction and Economic Growth Working Group Act. Now, it seemed like if Harry Reid would not appoint negotiators before the shutdown really had a chance to take hold, I wasn't sure this was really necessary. But there's a Chinese proverb having to do with allowing your opponent a graceful way out. And so this bill was proposed as a graceful way out so that Harry Reid could come back and say, okay, well, now we will, under this new bill, we'll go ahead and appoint negotiators and act like it was some new bill, when the truth is, it's just us trying to have a bicameral discussion, and yet we had 197 Democrats vote against, well, there were 197 that voted against the bill, basically Democrats saying we don't want to sit down and work this out with negotiators. And I thought about voting against it because it seemed pretty needless since we already voted to appoint negotiators, conferees. Harry Reid wouldn't do that. But I was persuaded, look, this is a way for Harry Reid to get out gracefully, go ahead and appoint negotiators now. Maybe we can get something worked out. We also passed the Federal Workers Pay Fairness Act, which ensures all federal employees are still on the job during the shutdown will be paid on time. And again, we have not seen that the Democrats in the House have any interest in bringing that to the floor to get a vote. So my friends across the aisle here in the House who kept screaming, give us a vote, I hope that will be directed toward their friend Harry Reid down the hall. Give a vote to the Senate on these bills. I just can't imagine a majority of the Senate not being willing to fund the things that we have passed. So let's see. Term that was used in the prior discussion was burning the House down, rigged negotiation. Rigged negotiation? We appointed negotiators. It's not rigged. Now, it is interesting that the President wishes to have the authority, takes the authority, even though he doesn't have it, to just rewrite the entire Obamacare law. Any part that he decides to wave his hand and dismiss, he's done that. But there are consequences for doing that. We've also seen in this shutdown something that's just not normally been seen in America. We've seen Franklin Roosevelt say we have nothing to fear but fear itself, but it's a rare thing, an extremely rare thing, to say that the market needs to be afraid and needs to start getting concerned, trying to gin up a panic to drive down the market. And the market, after a week's time of Republicans having negotiators sitting out there for over a week, waiting to sit down and negotiate with senators, and the senators thinking they're winning a political battle, so being unwilling to send negotiators to sit down and work out a deal. Today, between the threat of the concerns expressed by the President that the market needs to be concerned, basically saying it needs to start dropping so Republicans will get scared and they'll give me everything I want. So it's interesting, they talk across the aisle about holding gun to the head, burning the house down. The thing is, this is not our house. It's not the Democrats' house. It's the people's house. That's why I try to take people through at least once a week when we're in session. This is the people's house, and it breaks my heart that it's so hard to get in here nowadays. It wasn't when I was in high school, and I would like for it to be more accessible to people. But burning the house down, the references are so misplaced, because it's the Democratic president that says, give me everything I want, do not stand in my way when I legislate and rewrite the laws to suit me. We already saw that happen with the GM and Chrysler bailout. The government became socialist for a while here and decided to take up nationalist interest in things, did so with Wall Street. And with the car dealers, it should have scared most Americans. It should have scared Americans enough that they would never, ever have wanted the government to be in control of their health care, because what we saw is mainly Republican dealers were the ones that lost their dealerships. There was no due process. They violated bankruptcy law right and left. And the Supreme Court, Ruth Bader Ginsburg put a 24-hour hold, but then let it lapse. The Supreme Court hung their heads, let illegal actions, unconstitutional actions, takings without due process all take place. And Republican dealers, many of them were punished, had their dealerships taken away even though they still owed money on them. That should have been enough to scare everybody. But we didn't learn a lesson. Then we find out that after the Citizens United case that the President got upset, stood up here in this chamber, misrepresented. I know he didn't do it knowingly, but he was not familiar with the law regarding the Citizens United case and misrepresented the law as borne out by the Supreme Court Justice Alito, sitting there shaking his head saying not true. And, you know, the President, I'm sure, is just taking advice as given to him by those around him, not knowing that those that gave him advice were as ignorant as they are. But when people keep clamoring, give us a clean CR, when people hear the term, give us a clean CR, they need to understand that this is people demanding that Congress reject the responsibility it has under the Constitution and help crown a monarchy. Let's make it official. The Congress, we don't want the Congress to do its job and to appropriate as Article I requires. We want Congress just to say, here's the massive sacks of money, Mr. President. Go do what you want. Go find all the cylinders you want. Go find all the cronies that you can help in a capitalist way so that they can overtake their competitors. Go do what you wish. Maybe you can find some more dealerships to take away without due process. We hear friends across the aisle say they'd love to debate elected officials when the fact is, during the 4 years the Democrats had the House as a majority and had the Senate, it was the most partisan, closed Congress in the history of this country. There were more closed rules, bills where no amendments were allowed whatsoever. Even on Obamacare, we were not allowed input. There was some discussion, but it was made clear our input was not allowed, so nearly half of the country was not represented when it came to Obamacare. And it's really amazing to hear people say that the Obamacare law was passed by Congress, by both houses. The President signed it into law, and then, of course, they misrepresent. I know they don't do it intentionally, but saying the Supreme Court upheld it. No, the Supreme Court rewrote it and then upheld what they rewrote, or at least 5 out of the 9 did. And then the President has completely rewritten anything he doesn't like, given waivers, exemptions, and so it's not the law that got passed. And it's amazing to hear people say, gee, once a law is passed and the President signed it, you can't change it. It's the law. Get over it. And almost in the same breath come back and say, now the debt ceiling, parenthetically, which was passed by both houses, signed by President Obama, and is upheld by the Supreme Court, we want to change that immediately. Do that now. Don't use it as a gun to our head. What do you mean a gun to your head? It's the law. You just told us if it's passed by Congress, signed by the President himself, it bears my signature, we're not changing it. So why would that be a gun to the head when I thought the President said we weren't supposed to talk metaphorically like that? We weren't supposed to use violent metaphors. Why are we talking like that? Why are we calling people arsonists when they're just trying to follow the Constitution? But again, that's consistent with Homeland Security saying that those who believe in the Constitution are extremists and they must be watched at all costs. I think my friends are right when they say go to the American people. The trouble is the mainstream media has not done that. They have actually stood in the way of the truth getting to the American people. They're not asking questions like, as my friend had asked Andrea Mitchell today, why are you not asking why the President's not under Obamacare? She says, well, why aren't you on it? Well, we are under it. There's an issue about subsidies. I'm not going to take them, not when other Americans don't get them the way they used to. But, gee, so let's be honest about things. Well, the Wall Street Journal says that Maryland has 326 enrollees in their health exchange. Got an article here talking about there. Obamacare's winners and losers, an article from Mercury News that talks about Cindy Vincent, Tom Westura are big believers in the Affordable Care Act. They vote independent, proud to say they helped elect and re-elect President Barack Obama. Yet like many other Bay Area residents who pay for their own medical insurance, they were floored last week when they opened their bills. Their policies were being replaced with pricier plans that conform to all the requirements of the new health care law. Vincent of San Jose will pay $1,800 more a year for an individual policy, while Westura of Portola Valley will cough up almost $10,000 more for insurance for his family of 4. Welcome to the club, said Robert Lasuski, a prominent health care consultant, president of Health Policy and Strategy Associates in Virginia. For the years, the nation has been embroiled in the political rhetoric of Obamacare, but this past week, the reality of the new law sank in as millions of Americans had their first good look at how the 3.5-year-old legislation will affect their pocketbooks. It's a disaster. And so when my friends across the aisle say, hey, let's just let it fully take effect, we've already seen what happens. This president and Harry Reid are not going to let the full thing take effect. We've seen the way their IRS, with instructions from somebody around the White House, if not in it, we're still trying to get to the bottom of it, was instructed to go after conservative groups. And they did. The IRS was weaponized. We've seen what's happened with other groups. They're paying a price. And you want these people to control your health care? You want them to decide whether you get a knee replacement or a hip replacement? Beyond the glitches, will young and healthy Americans pick up Obamacare? Is an article October 7th that talks about one of the most heated arguments among health care policy writers has revolved around the issue of rate shock, which is a term for the premium increases many Americans, especially younger, healthier ones, will experience once the law kicks in. It's just going to get worse. My friends across the aisle say they want to vote. They've been getting votes. They will continue to get votes. We just ask them to join us in demanding that Harry Reid bring these bills to a floor for a vote, and let's get them passed so these things will be taken care of. And in answer to his question, why would we do that? The answer is to help America. It's that simple. Mr. Reid needs to bring these bills to the floor in the Senate. And if you're not going to bring the bills to the floor, for heaven's sake, appoint negotiators so we can get America moving before any more punitive shutdowns by this administration occur just to punish the American people because of the temper tantrum being thrown by those who want their way or nobody gets to play. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, this time I would move that we do now hereby adjourn.
The question is on the motion to adjourn. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Accordingly, the House stands adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning for morning hour debate.
The House today passed two bills, one which would create